Krai Andrey promised his friends he'd be the greatest treasure hunter, but reality had other plans. As his friends become legendary, Krai, well, he's mastered the fine art of begging for his life. Watch the rise of their greed in Krai's desperate bid for retirement. The story begins with our main protagonist, Krai, and his 5 friends. They dream of becoming treasure hunters, one day exploring treasure vaults around the world and gaining riches and glory. Krai's friends are excited and ready to pursue this dream, but while they all step forward, Krai hesitates, looking confused. The scene shifts to a rainy day in the future where we see Krai as a grown young man. He's on his way to an interview to become a treasure hunter. Those who risk their lives fighting monsters called phantoms and explore treasure vaults to collect valuable relics. As Krai approaches the queue, waiting for his turn to be interviewed, he notices 2 soldiers entering the building ahead of him. He feels a pang of sadness, regretting that he doesn't possess any special skills or abilities. Suddenly, a girl calls out to him from behind. She introduces herself as Rutuda Runebeck, a level 3 hunter. Krai introduces himself as Krai Andrey, but awkwardly refuses to shake the hand she offers. Rutuda, unfazed, redirects the conversation to the large crowd gathered for the interview. Their conversation is interrupted when a man rudely mocks Rutuda for joining the White Wolf's den at level 3, calling her an amateur. Krai quietly steps back, avoiding the brewing conflict. As the argument escalates, Rutuda pulls out her knife, ready to fight, but a soldier steps in, stopping them before a confrontation breaks out. The soldier warns that if they fight, they'll lose their chance to join the clan. Both Rutuda and the man suddenly burst into laughter, claiming it was all a joke. Uninterested in their antics, Krai quietly slips away. Afterward, we see Krai and Rutuda inside the building. Rutuda is in awe as she spots several hunters around and excitedly remarks that she's never seen anything like this before. Krai, however, casually responds that it's his 5th time here. Rutuda then asks Krai about a flashy group of people at a party, to which Krai explains that they are members of Arcbrave, an elite group that completed a level 7 treasure vault with just 6 members. He points out their leader, Arc Rodden. Truda then notices an empty desk beside Arcbrave's table and asks about it, but Krai remains silent. Suddenly, the same man who previously argued with Rutuda shows up. He introduces himself as Greg Hunter, a level 4 hunter. Greg starts talking about the clan that occupies the empty desk, calling them Grievers. Krai, in his thoughts, reveals that Grievers is a group of young hunters who came to the capital a few years ago. We are introduced to the 5 members of Grievers, whom Krai quietly refers to as his childhood friends. Rutuda points to another corner, where Greg explains that the hunters there are solo hunters, and adds that it's the first time Grievers are accepting new members into their clan. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out. A boy wielding a huge sword is loudly proclaiming himself the strongest and hurling insults at everyone. A black-haired girl named Tenno steps forward, challenging him to a duel. Just as things heat up, a man intervenes, calling the boy an idiot, which only angers him further. Greg, ever the instigator, tries to fuel the conflict, causing the room to clear as the duel is about to begin. Tenno confidently prepares for battle. Krai, sensing danger, urges Rutuda to escape before the duel gets deadly. As the crowd eagerly watches the 2 participants prepare to fight, Tenno suddenly senses something odd. Glancing around, she spots Krai quietly slipping out from behind the crowd. The duel begins, and the boy charges at Tenno, but she dodges his attack with ease, only to find herself face to face with Krai, who stumbles and falls to the floor. Surprised, Tenno asks Krai what he's doing here and addresses him as Master leaving Rutuda and everyone else stunned. We are then introduced to Krai's past. In the golden age of treasure hunters, one man stood above the rest, Krai Andrey, leader of a renowned party made up of his childhood friends. The scene shifts to Krai's childhood. He and his friends are exploring a treasure vault when Krai is nearly killed by a monster. Just as it's about to strike, one of his friends defeats it with a single blow. Everyone assumes Krai was acting as bait, and they start praising him for his bravery. However, Krai knows the truth. He feels he has the least talent compared to the rest of his friends. This realization leads him to plan his departure from the party. One day, Krai calls a meeting with the intention of announcing his retirement, but before he can say anything, his friends surprise him by unanimously deciding to make him their leader. Krai is shocked, and from that day forward, he unwillingly becomes the leader of the group, a role gifted to him by his friends. His plan to leave the party vanishes completely. The scene shifts back to the present, where Greg and Rutuda are stunned to learn that Krai is the leader. Rodden, surprised and slightly irritated, insults Krai, sarcastically asking if he was late due to oversleeping. Tenno steps in, defending her master, and orders Krai to remove Rodden's name from the roster for disrespecting him. We are then properly introduced to Tenno Shade, an apprentice of Krai's childhood friend, Liz. Rodden questions Krai about whether he has found any good candidates, to which Krai confidently replies that he already has enough members on his team. However, Krai then challenges Rodden to let him add a new member, choosing from the crowd. Rodden agrees. Tenno steps forward, insisting that Krai give his own name to Rodden, but Krai remains focused on the crowd. where two boys are fighting for the open spot. Krai stops them and asks the red-haired boy for his name. The boy introduces himself as Gilbert. Krai admits he's not good at judging people and decides to leave the selection to chance. He stands up and declares Gilbert's name under one condition, that he must not lose no matter what. Krai then removes a ring from his finger and announces that whoever manages to deliver the ring to Rodden will be selected for the team. He tosses the ring into the air. As Gilbert catches it, Tino swiftly steps forward and delivers a powerful knee strike to his jaw, sending him crashing into the bartender's counter. Chaos ensues as everyone starts fighting for the ring. Krai, unfazed, steps aside and wishes them luck before casually slipping out through the back door. The building is completely destroyed in the ensuing battle between the candidates. The scene shifts to the First Step clan house, where a woman named Eva informs Krai about the destruction of the building. She also tells him that the Explorer Association wants to speak with him. Krai, unfazed, tries to push the responsibility for the pub's bill and the meeting onto Rodden. Eva, unimpressed, remarks that Krai relies on Rodden too much. Krai makes an excuse saying he doesn't want to go anywhere without an escort and mentions that his reversible face relic, which allows him to disguise himself by changing his face, is broken. Despite his attempts to avoid the situation, Krai realizes he has no choice and reluctantly agrees to attend the meeting. At the Explorer Association, Krai kneels in front of branch manager Gark, apologizing for his foolish actions. He pleads, promising it will never happen again, and tries to assure Gark by saying the pub owner is super nice and will surely forgive them. Gark's assistant steps forward and hands Krai a book, the job ledger for all explorers. Some jobs offer high pay, but come with high risk, while others are easier but less rewarding. Krai stands up, putting on his shoes and holding his coffee, remarking that picking a job will land him in a predicament. Gark tells him to choose a task for himself. Krai flips through the book, searching for an easy job he can pass off to Ark. Eventually, he finds a level 3 task and decides on a rescue mission. He informs Gark of his choice. Krai heads back home, where Tino greets him with the unfortunate news that Ark isn't around, which complicates things for him. Trying to distract him, Tino points to the ring on Krai's finger. Krai notices the ring and Tino asks if she can keep it. Without much thought, Krai agrees. Krai then asks Tino if she's free now, to which she excitedly says yes, but when he mentions a quest, she immediately bolts. Krai quickly grabs his chain, which transforms into a living creature, catching Tino and dragging her back to him. Tino, frustrated, confesses that she had hoped for an ice cream date with him, but is now stuck with what she calls a crappy chore. She complains that, although she's level 4, she can't rescue 5 people alone. Krai, curious, asks why she's planning to go alone. Before she can answer, he introduces her to her new companions for the mission Rotuda, Greg and Gilbert. Together, they'll accompany her on the rescue mission. The scene flashes back 6 years. Krai and his friends stand outside the treasure hunter headquarters. Krai feels unsure, thinking he's a burden because he lacks real skills, while his friends are all incredibly talented. However, they brush off his worries and go inside anyway. A red-haired boy named Luke kicks the door open with flair, announcing, "I'm Luke, the best swordsman in the world," he brags. Then, a self-assured girl, Lismart, strides in, proclaiming to be the top thief around. Both are there to officially sign up as treasure hunters. As the group's leader, Krai, approaches the counter, the attendant greets him, handing over a form and asking for the party's name. Feeling anxious and fearing his friends will see him as unfit to lead, Krai glances at them before writing down the strangest name he can think of: Grieving Souls. Initially, his friends groan, calling the name terrible and tasteless. Spotting an opportunity, Krai tries to back out, labeling himself a lousy leader. To his surprise, his friends laugh and cheer, embracing the name. Their support boosts his confidence. Krai submits the form, and from that moment on, they are known as the Grieving Souls, with Krai Andrey as their leader. The scene shifts back to the present. Krai sits in a meeting with Ruta, Greg, and Gilbert, all stunned to see him leading the world's top clan. Greg smirks and calls him Thousand Trick, a name that impresses everyone. Krai clarifies that it's just a title, explaining that hunters who achieve a certain level of prestige earn special names from the association. Gilbert, however, remains doubtful, questioning Krai's strength. Tino, annoyed, expresses her frustration about working with Gilbert. Krai then asks the three of them to help Tino with her mission, but Gilbert, unimpressed and prideful, refuses to take orders from someone he considers weaker. He scoffs at the thought of Krai leading the most famous party in the world. Fed up with trying to convince Gilbert, Krai gives up and turns to Greg and Rahuda, who both agree to support Tino. Gilbert, still skeptical, questions his role in the mission. Unfazed, Krai tells him, "It's unfortunate, but you're free to sit this one out." He even suggests Tino take someone else from the clan. Tino, however, insists that Krai join them, but he declines, trusting Greg and Ruta to manage it. As Krai and Tino prepare to leave, Gilbert suddenly challenges them to a duel. If he loses, he'll join the mission, refusing to take orders from someone he views as weaker. Before Krai can reply, Tino steps forward. "I'll rain divine punishment upon you," she warns, ready to take him on herself. Before the duel starts, Tino demonstrates her flexibility to Krai, bending into various poses with ease, which annoys Gilbert. He makes it clear that after defeating Tino, Krai is next. Unfazed, Tino steps forward, calmly removing her sword and belt, getting ready to fight unarmed. Krai watches, thinking that while Tino and Gilbert are on the same skill level, Tino is the stronger fighter. However, the purgatorial sword Gilbert carries confuses him a bit. In a surprising move, Gilbert drops his sword, opting to fight without weapons. Krai thinks this is a foolish choice. As Tino stretches, she casually mentions that she'll be getting ice cream after the fight. Krai initially refuses her, but her cute, angry expression makes him agree. The fight begins. Tino swiftly leans in, landing a powerful blow that Gilbert barely dodges. In a flash, she spins and delivers a fierce kick to his face, sending him crashing into the wall. Gilbert quickly recovers and charges at her, but Tino traps him with her legs, locking him in a tight hold. Though Gilbert breaks free, he angrily calls out to Krai, but Tino expertly delivers a sharp strike to his neck, knocking him to the ground again. As he lies there, memories of his childhood flood his mind. He recalls his training to become a hunter, forming a party, and the pride he felt in his swift rise to power. He had always seen himself as one of the strongest, and now that belief is crumbling. Back in the present, Tino offers Gilbert the chance to use his sword, but he declines, realizing that if this were a real fight, he would have lost long ago. Krai steps in and reveals something shocking: he left his own party because of the huge power gap between him and his friends. This revelation leaves Gilbert speechless. Krai adds that a similar disparity exists in his current group, yet no one ever leaves. Gilbert suddenly understands Krai isn't the one who would be abandoned. Instead, he's the one ensuring no one gets left behind, his true strength lying in his mercy and leadership. Stunned, Gilbert now sees Krai as a phantom, a being far beyond his original perception. Krai casually steps forward, kicks Gilbert's sword aside, and unleashes an overwhelming burst of flame mana from the blade. The sheer intensity of the power leaves Gilbert in awe of Krai's effortless control. Gilbert finally comprehends the depth of Krai's abilities, recognizing him as a true monster in terms of strength. In this world, mana, the essence that powers everything, is invisible yet incredibly potent. Treasure vaults scattered throughout the land hold highly concentrated mana materials. These vaults have been studied for centuries but remain shrouded in mystery. One such vault is the White Wolf's Den, once home to a formidable wolf monster known as Silver Moon. The wolves were hunted to extinction for their prize fur, and in their wake, a treasure vault emerged, haunted by a blood-soaked wolf phantom. After reviewing Tino's mission, Krai explains to his assistant that it's a level 3 task, while their group operates at level 4. He then thanks EVA for the intel on Gilbert. Eva, curious, asks about the spectacle Krai caused earlier in the training hall with a relic. Krai confirms it, mentioning that Gilbert has even begun to wield a bit of mana. As Krai polishes his relic rings, he reflects on the joy he finds in collecting these powerful artifacts and the unique miracles they create. EVA notes that Krai has quite a few relics, but he assures her that each one has a special purpose. Suddenly, Krai remembers that he forgot to recharge one of his relics. He quickly heads to a couple who assist him with this task, thanking them as they express gratitude for Krai always saving them from phantoms. Yet Krai knows the truth: it's Eva and Ark who tackle those dangerous missions, not him. The husband then shares alarming news: a rogue phantom in the shape of a wolf has recently appeared on a northern road, wreaking havoc on a fully guarded caravan. As the wife finishes charging Krai's relic and hands it back to him, Krai remains confident that Tino, Greg, and Gilbert can handle it. However, the wife informs him that the level 5 party, led by Rudolph Devout, disappeared just days ago, leaving Krai visibly shaken. Upon hearing that Devout's party was sent on the same mission, Krai's concern deepens. When the husband asks where Tino was sent, Krai hesitantly admits he dispatched her to the White Wolf's Den. The couple is horrified. Sending a level 4 party to where a level 5 group vanished is alarming enough, but their shock deepens when Krai adds that Tino is also accompanied by 3 independent hunters. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Krai quickly excuses himself, saying he has urgent matters to address. The scene shifts to Tino and her party navigating through a dense forest. She briefs them on the waiver they signed earlier, acknowledging the risks of the mission. Tino explains that the party formation is part of her master's plan. Greg, still reeling from the recent events, remarks that they barely met the day before. However, Gilbert starts connecting the dots, realizing that Krai knew why he had left his previous party. Tino continues, stating that her master, Krai, possesses vast knowledge and can easily predict their actions and thoughts. Greg agrees, commenting that even the incident at the pub was likely part of Krai's grand calculations. Despite the tension, Tino reassures them, insisting everything is according to her master's design. Meanwhile, Krai is back in his room, deeply troubled. It's too late to send a rescue team, and the thought weighs heavily on him. He approaches his bookshelf, pulls out a specific book, and reveals a hidden door behind it. Back in the forest, Tino's group is suddenly ambushed by a wolf, not an ordinary wolf, but one clad in armor and wielding a sword. The group realizes they're facing something far more dangerous than they anticipated. Tino, remaining calm, notes that Krai always manages to exceed her expectations. Cutting back to Krai, he's now in his relic vault room, searching for something to combat the wolf. His eyes land on a specific locker, and an idea sparks. He retrieves a collection of relics, gearing up for action. Just then, Eva enters and notices Krai's worry for Tino and her group. Krai tries to downplay it, but Eva spots Citri's slime clinging to his neck, which Krai quickly tries to hide. Without wasting any time, Krai steps out onto his balcony, Putting on a relic hoodie that transforms into a sleek aerodynamic jet, ready for action, he launches into the night sky. Eva watches with concern, realizing that the relic Krai is using, called the Night Hiker, is incredibly dangerous. It has no brakes or safety measures. We flash back to Krai's past, where he and his friends first visit the bustling capital of Zerbrudia. They're relaxing at a bar, swapping stories when Luke casually mentions his broken sword, calling it a divine sword like it's some sacred relic. Meanwhile, Lucia rolls her eyes, reminding everyone that they never expected to encounter a Cyclops in a level 1 treasure vault. Because, Cyclops are supposed to be level 4 monsters. A nearby drunk guy overhears, and thinking it's all a joke, laughs at their ridiculous tale. He warns them that if they ever truly saw a Cyclops, they'd better run for their lives. Cue Liz and Lucia, who both casually hold up a bag that captures the man's attention. He peeks inside in surprise. There's a Cyclops eyeball staring right back at him. The poor guy nearly jumps out of his skin. Meanwhile, Krai's internal monologue sighs note to self tell them to stop bringing body parts to bars. Cut to the present. Tino and her squad easily slice through a wolf-like enemy, though the entire team seems tense about hunting down the elusive fox. Greg asks Gilbert why he isn't using his sword's firepower, and Gilbert sheepishly admits the sword's out of mana. Turns out, Krai used up the mana earlier, and Gilbert still doesn't know how to recharge it himself. Classic. Ruta and Greg suggest they fall back, but Tino's not having it. She orders them to stick to the plan, pointing out that they haven't found any bodies yet, which means the people they're searching for are probably still alive. Of course, she insists it's all part of the Master's plan, even the whole sword being out of mana situation. Determined, Tino leads the way deeper into the forest, where they soon spot more wolves at the White Wolf's den. But plot twist, these wolves are armed with bows and guns, because why not? Tino coolly notes that their oversized bodies probably make it hard for them to move inside the den, so they decide to lure the foxes out for a fight. Gilbert, ever eager, wants to charge in, but Tino halts him, calling him an idiot. She hatches a plan she and Ruta will lure the enemies out, while Gilbert and Greg hit them from behind. We cut to Krai, still out on his night hike, praying hard for Tino's survival, and let's be real, probably for his sanity too. Meanwhile, Tino and her crew are deep in battle, taking down the enemy foxes with ease. Tino, in all her confidence, credits their success to teamwork, something the enemy clearly lacks. But just as they're about to breathe easy, more foxes appear, and Greg and Ruta spring into action. As the fight unfolds, Tino reflects on her team. Greg, the seasoned strategist, coordinates like a champ. Gilbert, the big talker, may boast endlessly, but he's got the strength to back it up. And Ruta, while not flashy, has killer enemy detecting skills. Tino proudly proclaims that she calculated everything flawlessly, convinced that their master was right about everything. She's practically calling him a god now. Gilbert starts reminiscing about his past, recalling when he left his old team in a fit of rage. He once thought they were weak, but now he understands they were simply desperate. Slicing through a fox alongside Greg, Gilbert finally grasps the true value of teamwork. Growth moment unlocked. The crew pushes deeper into the den, eventually stumbling upon a massive chamber. Tino immediately senses something big, like boss level big. The others suggest retreating, but Tino, ever confident, reminds them they've come this far without a scratch. In her eyes, the boss is just another challenge waiting to be conquered. Noticing Greg's cautious demeanor, Tino drops some wisdom-safe missions don't lead to growth. Greg flashes back to his past when he used to shy away from enemies too tough to beat. That habit cost him dearly, including the lives of many friends. Tino reflects on how Master Krai knew Greg wanted to change, which is why he chose him for the team. The same goes for Gilbert. Tino, in full fangirl mode, again calls Krai a god and marvels at how their team was formed not by luck, but through careful planning. Ruta, curious, asks why she was chosen. Tino glances at Ruta and zeroes in on her impressive chest. Without missing a beat, she names that as the reason. Ruta, shocked and speechless, tries to process this revelation. They shake it off and keep moving deeper into the den, ready for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, Krai finally arrives at the den, but plot twist, his jet relic has no brakes. He careens into the cave, ricocheting off the walls like a pinball. Classic Krai. On the other side, Tino and her party face the den's final boss, a terrifying, super strong fox monster. Tino quickly realizes the boss isn't wearing a helmet-perfect target. Gilbert and Greg jump in to distract the boss, but in the chaos, the boss smashes Greg's sword to bits. Tino seizes the moment, running up the boss's arm and slicing its neck, taking it down. But not without a cost. Tino injures her leg during the attack. Ruta rushes over, worried, but Tino brushes it off, casually pouring a potion on her injury like it's no big deal. As Gilbert and Greg approach, Tino hands her sword to Greg, but just as he thanks her, a spear whizzes straight toward Tino. She dodges it with lightning reflexes. No time to celebrate though, more boss fox monsters arrive from the front cave, and these ones are packing even more weapons. To everyone's surprise, Tino shouts for them to run toward the nearest passage. But as they move, a boss fox blocks the exit. Greg and Gilbert step up, telling Tino and Ruta to escape while they act as bait. Tino suddenly remembers Krai's ring, which is actually a relic capable of firing a powerful laser attack. She tells the team to aim for the fox's eyes and signals for backup. As Greg and Gilbert keep the boss fox busy, Tino charges up the relic and fires a blast straight into the boss's eye. The fox writhes in agony, giving Gilbert a chance to attack, but just as he steps forward, Tino yells for him to stop. Too late. The boss fox slams Gilbert into the cave wall. Dazed, Gilbert apologizes for not listening. Just when it seems like the team is doomed, A massive explosion sends the boss flying into the wall. Enter Krai, crash landing dramatically right on top of the boss. Tino's face flushes red. Krai's finally here. The remaining boss foxes freeze, terrified by his arrival, but the furious boss fox attempts to attack him anyway, only to find it impossible thanks to the relic ring on Krai's finger. Everyone is stunned, including the boss. Krai, ever the drama king, announces he only has 17 lives left as if that's normal. With a smug grin, he activates his relic ring and blasts the boss fox again. But to everyone's horror, the boss shrugs off the hit without a scratch. Krai experiences an internal mini-crisis, realizing the relic ring isn't as powerful as he thought. In a moment of desperation, he grabs a tube necklace from around his neck and hurls it at the boss. It detonates, filling the cave with thick fog. Krai orders everyone to retreat. As they scramble to escape, Tino struggles to keep up due to her earlier leg injury. While Krai is already wheezing from their short sprint, heroism is exhausting in the chaos. Tino flashes back to the first time she met Krai. She was young, and some rookies tried to capture her, but the legendary Grieving Soul swooped in to save the day, with Krai leading the charge. Ever since that moment, she's dreamed of joining them. Back in the present, Krai and the team finally make it out of the boss's lair. Krai pauses to compliment Tino before noticing her injured leg. He uses a relic to heal her wound. Greg, ever curious, asks how Krai plans to defeat the boss fox. To everyone's surprise, Krai admits that retreating was actually the best option. With that, he orders them all to head out, and they start their trek back through the den, wiser but definitely not in one piece. We flash back to Krai's past, where his friends are in awe of his impressive collection of relics. Liz reminds him of his promise to gift her one, and Citri notices a peculiar bag. Curious, he asks about it. Krai casually explains that it's a magical bag capable of holding an endless number of items, despite its small size. When his friends assume it must be incredibly valuable, Krai downplays it, clarifying that it's actually not worth much. Its only use is storing chocolates. Liz picks up a bracelet, but before Krai can say anything, she slips and tumbles. Krai calmly explains that the bracelet is a labyrinth ring known for distorting spatial perception. Next, Luke grabs a sword, only for it to suddenly take control of him. Krai reveals that it's a cursed blade, which drives its wielder to madness, compelling them to slaughter anyone in sight. Despite the dangers of these relics, Liz and Luke decide to use them for training, intrigued by their power. Cut to the present. Krai and his team trek through the endless expanse of the White Wolf Den. Everything looks the same, and the group grows increasingly disoriented. Krai observes the situation and reflects that while Tino and Ruda are expert thieves, they're not leading the group unaware. They've strayed far from the exit. Krai suspects that Tino is upset with him for dragging them into this mess. Gilbert breaks the silence, asking where they're heading. Krai stays quiet, but Tino jumps in, reassuring everyone that it's all part of the Master's plan, even though they've been walking away from the exit the whole time. Tino reveals she checked the map earlier, confirming that this route won't lead them out, much to Krai's surprise. Ruda then questions Krai, pointing out that while this might be part of their training, he should at least reveal their destination. Krai, still silent, realizes he doesn't know where they're going at all. Krai and his group come to a fork in the path, leaving Tino and the others in stunned silence. In awe, Tino calls Krai a god again, insisting that Krai must have chosen this path for a reason. Without hesitation, they rush forward, leaving Krai perplexed. Moments later, they encounter a wounded level 5 party, abandoned and in dire need of help. Tino quickly hands out potions to the weakened members. The leader of the group, Rudolph Devout, introduces himself and expresses deep gratitude for their rescue. Tino directs the thanks to Krai, but Krai quickly brushes it off, insisting it was nothing more than a coincidence. Ruda, ever observant, notices that the potions aren't working and informs everyone that the party needs food. Without hesitation, Krai pulls out some chocolate from his magic bag and offers it to them. Tino, once again awestruck, calls Krai a god, to which Krai casually offers her another piece of chocolate. Gilbert raises a question, his curiosity piqued. While the wolves are powerful, they shouldn't have been able to overpower a level 5 party. Rudolph's answer sends a chill through the group. He explains that the real threat isn't the wolves but a phantom wearing a skull mask. The mention of this phantom causes a wave of unease to ripple through the group. Rudolph explains that this phantom might be the lingering curse of the Silver Moon. After the human extermination, the wolves' hatred grew in the treasure vault, eventually manifesting into a terrifying power. Despite being a level 5 party, they were helpless against this phantom, which Rudolph believes is as formidable as the 1,000 swords. Krai, lost in thought, recalls his friend Luke, a level 6 hunter and apprentice to the Sword Saint. Luke, a sword prodigy, could defeat any foe with just a wooden sword. If such a phantom existed, Krai believes Luke would have already taken it down. He then realizes Tino won't be able to handle this phantom alone. Ruhuda interrupts his thoughts, asking what their next move should be. Krai, with a calm expression, appoints Tino as the leader of the mission, presenting it as a valuable experience for her. Tino steps up, confidently taking charge and leading the group toward the exit. Rudolph offers to act as a shield if the phantom reappears, giving them a chance to escape. Tino reassures him, saying there's no need to worry with Krai by their side. As they hear the wolves' roars echoing in the distance, Krai senses the wolves closing in. He checks his safety rings, counting only 5 left. One more death, and it's over for him. Worse, his shooting ring won't be enough to stop the impending onslaught. To his horror, he realizes the sword relic he had tied to his waist is missing. His mind races as the gravity of the situation sets in. This could very well be the end. Krai contemplates his options, knowing time is running out. Tino, hiding behind Krai, suddenly warns him that something immense is approaching. Krai considers using his Night Hiker relic, planning to turn himself into a human missile for a surprise attack on the Phantom regardless of the cost to his own life. But before he can act, Tino clings to him, panicked, and begs him to protect them from the Phantoms. Just then, the first Phantom is sent crashing into a cave wall by an overwhelming kick. Krai instantly recognizes the familiar power behind the blow. Liz emerges, removing her mask, and hands Krai the sword he dropped earlier. She teases him for worrying her, revealing she had learned that Krai ventured into the treasure vault without warning. Liz then turns to Tino, scolding her for letting a pile of trash remain untouched. Gilbert tries to intervene, but Liz swiftly strikes him with a powerful blow, sending him crashing into a wall. Enraged, she snaps at him for interrupting her. She then turns back to Tino, her voice harsh as she questions whether Tino is incompetent or simply lacks ambition. Liz warns her that if she doesn't improve, she'll soon be despised by everyone. As Liz chastises Tino, the Phantom rises again, but stops in its tracks, unnerved by Liz's ferocity. Krai quickly steps in, praising Tino for handling the mission well, which helps to calm Liz down a little. Tino, tears streaming down her face, apologizes profusely, but Liz seems somewhat satisfied with Krai's praise. Before they can even catch their breath, a massive wolf wielding a gun appears, opening fire. But Liz, completely composed, slows time around her, effortlessly catching every bullet in midair. As the dust settles, the group is stunned to see Liz has arranged the bullets into a neat pattern on the ground. Fuming, Liz scolds Tino again, mocking her for being frightened by such a slow Phantom. Without hesitation, Liz leaps into the air, slicing through the giant wolf's chest with a single powerful kick, killing it instantly. As the Phantom swings its sword at her, Liz effortlessly halts the attack with one hand and slams the Phantom into the ground with a crushing blow. She continues her tirade, demanding Tino improve 100-fold, causing the apprentice to burst into tears. With minimal effort, Liz finishes off the Phantom. Krai, in awe, tells Liz to calm down, marveling at her unparalleled speed. He realizes that Liz is so fast she doesn't even leave a shadow behind, which is why she's known as the Stifled Shadow. Liz smiles and hugs Krai, who warmly welcomes her back. At the Grieving Soul's house, Garfield announces that he's decided to rejoin his old party, vowing that one day he'll be able to catch bullets like Liz. His proclamation is met with doubt as everyone believes it's impossible. Tino, however, warns Gilbert about something from 6 years ago when Krai had accidentally ordered their masks without eye holes, leaving Liz's true power hidden. At the time, she had been fighting nearly blind due to the design of the mask. In a flashback, we see Citri, the sharp mind of the Grieving Souls, handing Krai a mysterious slime capsule. With a serious tone, she warns him release it, and it could decimate the entire capital. Krai's jaw drops, and even EVA, standing beside him, nervously steps back, clearly not wanting to be near whatever danger the capsule might hold. Back in the present, Krai can't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at him. He searched his entire room, but the slime is nowhere to be found. Sitting back, he retraces his steps, replaying the events in his mind. He recalls opening the capsule once in the White Wolf's den, only to find it empty. Every other time, it had been securely locked away. Slowly, it dawns on him the capsule was empty all along. He lets out a nervous laugh, feeling a small relief, but then a new worry creeps in. We shift to the White Wolf's den, where a team is on a mission to investigate the recent Phantom sightings anomalies threatening the entire region. The country values this treasure trove dearly, so the pressure is on. Meanwhile, Krai, sleepless from worrying about the dangerous slime, steps outside for a breather. Eva finds him and relays that the association is demanding a full report on the White Wolf's Den incident. Krai directs her to Tino, the mission leader, but Eva informs him that Tino is busy training with Liz. With no other option, Krai heads to the training room, only to find a crowd gathered. Inside, Krai meets Sven Anger, a level 6 hunter, who warns him that if he doesn't intervene, Tino might not survive Liz's brutal lesson. Krai hesitates but steels himself, walking into the room. He finds Tino sprawled on the floor as Liz mocks her for her weakness. Just as Liz prepares to land a final blow, Krai steps in, asking for a break on Tino's behalf, citing her exhaustion. Annoyed but compliant, Liz agrees, until Tino, to everyone's surprise, grabs Liz's leg and insists she can continue. Krai watches in shock as Tino's intense, mask-like expression locks in place. Liz, thrilled by the sudden turn, resumes the training with even more fervor. Krai slips out quietly, apologizing to the onlookers as the session ramps up once more. Krai takes a break with Sven at a nearby coffee shop, where Sven fills him in on the latest news. Multiple Phantoms have been sighted in the dens, and a Night Order party was recently wiped out. Krai suspects this is the real reason Gark is demanding a report on their last mission. He wonders why Ark, who's both stronger and more capable, hasn't shown up yet, hoping he'll arrive soon. Krai then suggests Sven focus on the association's missions instead of training and tells him to let Gark know he'll be unavailable for a while. As Krai gets up to leave, Sven's teammate questions why Krai rarely ventures out while his team faces the danger. Sven, chuckling, explains that Krai isn't quite what he seems, calling him a monster in his own right. At the Explorer Association, Gark receives a report confirming that the White Wolf's den activities remain unchanged. He mutters to himself about the need to speak directly with Krai, but his assistant informs him that Krai is unavailable. Determined to get answers, Gark decides to meet Krai in person, eager to witness the situation firsthand. Meanwhile, in the capital's research department, an elderly researcher is approached by a group of mysterious young operatives. They warn him it's time to relocate, the association is closing in on their base. The old man, however, is more focused on his latest discovery, a tube capable of storing immense amounts of mana, enabling them to create treasure vaults at will. When questioned about Sophia, the one responsible for their defense, he reassures them that she is on leave granted with his permission. Ordering the team to continue their investigation, they melt into the shadows, leaving him to his work. Krai finds himself standing in the midst of chaos, the capital in ruins, destroyed by the very slime he feared. The destruction reaches its peak, and just as he's overcome by the devastation, he jolts awake. It was all a dream. But the shock doesn't end there. Liz is lying next to him, her habit of sneaking into his bed catching him off guard once again. She casually asks if he's free today, and Krai, hoping she'll be busy training Tino, tries to dodge her plans. Liz, however, insists it's their day off, leaving Krai with little choice but to go along. Later, Gark arrives at the Grieving Soul's house, determined to meet Krai directly. When he asks for Krai, Liz interjects, claiming he's busy. Frustrated by the lack of a mission report, Gark starts scolding, but Liz, unfazed, fires back. The exchange escalates quickly, and soon Liz charges at Gark. He blocks her attack effortlessly. As they clash, Krai discreetly slips away with Gark's assistant, Kana, heading upstairs to discuss the White Wolf's den. Krai reports that nothing unusual has happened there, but the sounds of battle from below suggest Liz isn't backing down anytime soon. Downstairs, Gark's massive punches shake the hall, while Liz treats the fight like a casual sparring match, taunting him to train harder. Eventually, Krai steps in, calming Gark and diffusing the situation. Liz, ignoring Gark, wraps her arms around Krai in a sudden hug, leaving Gark quietly stewing with determination to improve. Not long after, Evia walks in, stunned by the wreckage in the hall. Outside, Liz drags Krai along on a shopping trip. As they walk, Krai mentions the White Wolf's boss, but Liz sheepishly admits she doesn't remember them. Her nonchalance only heightens Krai's worries about the slime's destructive potential. His thoughts are interrupted when Liz thrusts her shopping bags into his hands and grabs a man nearby, accusing him of staring. Krai steps in, allowing the man to escape. However, the man is no ordinary passerby. Back at his hideout, he breathes heavily, shaken by how close he came to being discovered. Gark seethes, his frustration boiling over as he hears, yet again, that Krai is too busy to meet him. He mutters under his breath, his mind swirling with unanswered questions. Memories of the mission that brought the Obsidian Cross here flood back. Can he really trust them? Their reassurance feels hollow, but he pushes forward, giving the order to investigate the White Wolf's den. In the present, the Obsidian Cross fights fiercely against monstrous foes in the depths of the White Wolf's den. Sten, amidst the chaos, can't help but notice how everything seems to unfold exactly as Krai had planned. Meanwhile, Krai walks through the slums with Liz trailing beside him, practically glowing with excitement, convinced this is a date. Her enthusiasm is short-lived when Krai turns to her with a blunt. This is not a date. He explains they're in the most dangerous part of the Imperial Palace, a place where the locals' wary eyes follow their every move. Liz asks what he's looking for, and Krai reveals the mystery people have been disappearing. It's eerie but not unheard of here. However, the possibility of a sea tree slime being involved, that's a whole new level of trouble. He remembers an ice cream shop that recently opened nearby and suggests they check it out. Liz, overjoyed, clings to his arm as they make their way there. From a nearby building, a man watches them, his face a mix of fear and disbelief. Liz had captured him once, and now she's here with Krai. Could they have tracked him? No, he thinks, that's impossible. There's no way they could know the ice cream shop is actually a secret research base. He scrambles to lock the doors, breathing a sigh of relief as his partner Sophia arrives. When Krai and Liz reach the shop, it's closed. Liz, irritated, tries to force her way in, but Krai stops her, calmly suggesting it's probably just shut for the day. Liz is unconvinced. She swears it was open moments ago. The sweet scent of ice cream still lingers in the air. Inside, the man listens nervously, tension building, until finally Krai and Liz walk away. Back at the clan, Krai wrestles with frustration, trying to piece together the mystery of the sea tree slime. Liz offers to help but admits magical creatures aren't her specialty, something Krai needs now more than ever. Just then, Eva appears, announcing she's assembled a team to continue investigating the White Wolf's den. With a sigh, Krai agrees to let her handle it. For now, he decides this mission is in her hands. At the Kashik Tower headquarters, the atmosphere is tense. The leader is informed that Thousand Tricks has uncovered one of their hidden bases. Nervous glances are exchanged among the members, whispers growing louder. Could Krai's network finally be outmaneuvering them? The man from the ice cream shop is baffled. Why would Krai discover their base and then leave it untouched? He can't shake the question, what is Krai planning? The leader turns to Sophia, seeking her opinion. Without hesitation, she suggests confronting the hunters head-on. While some argue they're no match for the hunters, Sophia's confidence doesn't waver. She sees this as the perfect opportunity to test the advanced defense system she designed. Her voice is steady as she declares that eliminating the hunters will ensure no one survives to expose their secrets. Her boldness earns the leader's trust, and command of the mission is placed firmly in her hands. Meanwhile, Tino is enjoying a rare moment of peace, soaking in a bath. She marvels at her flawless skin, despite the harsh training she's endured under her master. Realizing he must have used a potion bath to heal her injuries, she feels a surge of gratitude, simply relieved to be alive and well. Later, Tino heads to the clan building, only to find a massive crowd gathered. Curiosity piqued, she asks a fellow member what's happening. He explains they're teaming up with the association to investigate the White Wolf's den. Tino is taken aback by the sheer number of people involved. The member mentions that Krai originally wanted Ark to lead the mission, but with him unavailable, this group was called in. He adds that only the Grievers could truly replace Ark. Tino's mind races, wondering what's escalated since her last visit to the treasure vault to warrant such a response. Even Krai seems slightly rattled by the turnout. EVA approaches, reminding Krai that this is the team they agreed upon the previous day. Krai hesitates, muttering that they could probably handle it with half the people. But the hunters' unease is palpable. They all know this mission was meant for Ark. Finally, Krai gives in, agreeing to send the full team. The tension breaks when Liz storms in, taunting the gathered group as cowards and boasting that she and Tino could handle the mission alone. Krai, mindful of how hard Liz's training has been on Tino, firmly declines her offer. He's determined to shield Tino from further hardships, at least for now. EVA then turns to Krai, asking him to lead the mission. He grimaces, clearly uninterested, and tries to pass the responsibility to Sven. She quickly reminds him that Sven is already in the treasure vault. Caught off guard, Krai reluctantly agrees to lead, but claims he's busy and will join them later. For now, he appoints Sven as the acting leader. Sven and his team charge into the White Wolf's den, cutting through waves of monsters with precision. The creatures are powerful, but nothing out of the ordinary. Sten takes note of their strength, but urges the team to press forward. Together, they carve a path deeper into the den, inching closer to the heart of the mystery. At the clan, Liz begs Krai to let her join the others heading to the vault. Krai shakes his head, insisting he has a special task for her. Excited, Liz agrees without hesitation, completely unaware that Krai is keeping her occupied to stop her from rushing headlong into the danger. As the others prepare, one of the hunters questions the nature of the mission. Krai warns them to stay alert for a slime, a surprising threat for a high-level vault. He cryptically adds that this slime may be anything but ordinary. Over at Akashic Tower, chaos reigns as the members scramble to respond to the hunter assault. The leader's anger boils over, but one advisor warns against escalating the situation by involving the grieving souls, fearing the unpredictable consequences. Sophia remains calm, confident in the defense systems she designed, especially those crafted to counter Citri's magic. She assures the leader that the intruders can be handled. With her confidence winning the room, Sophia requests permission to use all available resources to neutralize the threat. The leader, after a brief pause, grants her full control, rallying the group to give her their full support. Meanwhile, Sven and his team press deeper into the White Wolf's den. Sten's party starts questioning the mission's purpose, their unease growing. Sven reminds them that the order came directly from Gark, which should be reason enough. Himmerk grumbles about cleaning up Krai's messes, prompting Sven to respond with quiet conviction, saying, "One day you'll understand just how extraordinary Krai really is." As if on cue, Sven receives an urgent message and immediately orders the team to regroup outside. Once there, they're met by a member of the Obsidian Cross, who waves off the warnings about the slime. Sven, undeterred, insists on caution. He recounts a seemingly lighthearted story about a flower viewing party Krai once organized where everyone brought weapons. The location? The prison garden, now a treasure vault. Sven uses the tale to drive home Krai's uncanny ability to anticipate danger long before anyone else sees it coming. Back at the clan, Liz eagerly asks Krai when they'll set off, while Krai, true to form, plans to join the mission at the last possible moment. Before he can slip away, Citri arrives early, sensing Krai might need her. Pulling him aside, she urges him to act swiftly before their enemies have the chance to grow stronger. Her tone is firm but full of concern, leaving Krai momentarily silent. Elsewhere, Gark's determination pushes him closer to the action. Ignoring Kana's protests, he insists on entering the White Wolf's den himself, his competitive nature burning as brightly as ever. Kana sighs, knowing there's no stopping him once his mind is made up. Just then, Citri approaches, her expression serious, as she requests a private audience with Gark. In a brief flashback, we see a young Sitri sharing her dream with Krai. She wants to help others enjoy being hunters. Immediately puts Krai on edge. She reassures him that the slime won't harm them, but seems unconcerned about anyone else. When Sitri wonders aloud if it might have escaped through the bathroom drain, Krai's mind races with dread. Could it already be wreaking havoc in the city's plumbing? Sitri, ever calm, promises to take care of it, leaving Krai with more questions than answers. The mission. When Sven realizes the responsibility has fallen to him, he quickly gathers the group and asks if anyone has experience dealing with slimes. The answer is unanimous none. They assume regular weapons will suffice, but Sven reminds them of Krai's warning this slime may be far from ordinary. Jean, the team loudmouth, laughs at the group's hesitation, mocking their fear of a mere slime. Sven, unbothered, tells him he'll likely be the first casualty if he doesn't take the threat seriously. Jean stomps off in frustration. Meanwhile, Talia Whitman, an alchemist, introduces herself to the team. She explains that she's worked with Sitri on slimes and reveals a drug she's developed to kill them, but she admits, with a tinge of doubt, that it might not be effective against an abnormal one. At the Akashic Tower hideout, Noctis, the leader, contacts his disciple through a magical stone. Confident of their impending victory, she details her strategy to overwhelm the hunters with their forces and cunning tactics. Noctis presses her for specifics, and she outlines her precise plan for a swift and decisive win. Outside the White Wolf's den, Sven finalizes the team's strategy. They'll secure the den's interior, use whistles for communication, and split into suppression and rescue squads. With the plan in place, the team moves out, buoyed by confidence despite the unknown dangers. By evening, the group finds nothing out of the ordinary, only win, with some wondering if Krai had miscalculated. Jean, frustrated by the caution, mocks the group's approach and grumbles about Krai's orders. Sven brushes him off, insisting complaints can wait until the mission is complete. Ignoring Sven's warnings, Jean storms off alone into the forest. Frustrated and muttering to himself, John ventures deeper, convinced Krai is just a privileged city boy, eerie noises in the forest. Following the sound, Jean stumbles upon a chained wolf knight and two shadowy figures conducting a sinister ritual. Without hesitation, Jean charges in, knocking the figures to the ground. But before he can demand answers, horror unfolds as the knight's body contorts and transforms into a monstrous slime-like creature. Its glowing, ravenous eyes lock onto Jean as it shatters its chains. One of the figures smirks and warns Jean the creature is now a demonized monster, driven by an insatiable hunger for mana. Jean, trembling with fear, scrambles to blow his whistle, signaling the team for help as the monstrous slime lunges toward him. At the camp, the sharp blast of Jean's whistle pierces the air. They race toward the sound, finding Jean battered and bloodied, his hand missing. Struggling to speak, Jean hoarsely confirms Krai's warning the slime isn't like anything they've encountered before. The monstrous creature towers over them. Talia, the team's alchemist, stares in disbelief, admitting she's never seen a slime of this kind. Sven quickly calls for the mages to launch a distraction. Growing desperate, Sven resorts to using the experimental drug Talia had given him, hoping it would trigger the slime's destruction. To everyone's horror, the creature remains unscathed. Talia is speechless. Sven grits his teeth, realizing this isn't a normal slime at all. A hunter recalls Krai's cryptic warning it's slime-like her, anticipating trouble. With a quick assessment, she identifies the problem. The slime is surrounded by a magical barrier that deflects physical and magical attacks. Sitri studies the creature further, marveling at its unnatural strength, even in a high-level strong suspicion about who's orchestrating the chaos. Meanwhile, at the Akashic Tower hideout, Noctis reels in disbelief. Sitri's success encountering Sitri lays out her findings, identifying Noctis and the Akashic Tower as the culprits behind the chaos. She explains they've been conducting experiments to control treasure vaults. Skeptical city officials dismiss her claims, citing Noctis's banishment. Sitri, unfazed, admits she never expected them to believe her, that's why she's been hunting him on her own. She further explains that the phantom slime was an unintended side effect of Noctis's experiments. Talia asks if there might be an underground device linked to the chaos, and Sitri confirms it. She warns there could be more monsters lurking and suggests interrogating the mage John captured for more information. The hunters find renewed confidence in Sitri's leadership, asking if she has more anti-mana material. Sitri admits the capsule was her last, but reassures them, promising to devise a plan with their help. I'm not strong, but adds a warning. Don't underestimate her. Sitri will do whatever it takes to reach her goals. Meanwhile, back at the clan, Liz continues pestering Krai to head to the White Wolf's den. Krai remains nonchalant, waiting for what he calls the perfect moment. Liz, enjoying the back and forth, ramps up her efforts, determined to convince him. Watching from the sidelines, Tino blushes, unsure whether to intervene or simply admire the dynamic between the two. At Akashic Tower, asking for the location of their boss, but they remain fiercely loyal, refusing to speak. Realizing that persuasion won't work, Sitri takes a more drastic approach. He reveals a brainwashing potion, planning to force-feed it to the prisoners. The potion is a war crime capable of erasing memories, manipulating consciousness, or turning people into mindless slaves. Gark, ever the voice of reason, reminds Sitri that as members of the association, they can't resort to such criminal methods. Sitri quickly apologizes, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but with the potion still in her hand, she faces severe consequences for possessing it. To destroy the evidence, she makes a shocking decision: she drinks it herself. Her calm demeanor surprises the others, and they watch in disbelief as she remains unharmed. Thanks to her immunity to the potion's effects, Sitri is perfectly safe. Her focus swiftly shifts back to the real threat, a massive slime monster heading toward their camp. Sven asks for her plan, barriers, and they'll need to identify its element. Deterred, Sitri commands the mages to use fireballs to slow the monster, but the attacks are effortlessly deflected. She deduces that the creature is surrounded by a Bark suggests waiting for the monster's mana to deplete, but Sitri immediately dismisses the idea. The creature has enough mana to rampage for hours, and waiting is not an option. She theorizes that a concentrated, powerful attack might break through the barrier, but none of the mages present are strong enough to execute it. As the team struggles to find a solution, blunder. Back at Akashic Tower, Megas confronts Flick for disobeying Sophia's direct orders. Sophia, furious, chastises Flick for his idiotic decision-making. Although Flick seethes with anger, he can't refute her. He's forced to take responsibility for the failure. Despite his blunder, Megas forgives him, reasoning that the slime monsters aren't their only weapon. But with Sitri and Gark, an X-level 7 hunter on the battlefield, the situation has become dire. Sophia comments that the captured members, as Sitri has her own methods for extracting the truth without resorting to war crimes. Acknowledging the precariousness of their situation, Sophia makes a final declaration. The only way to turn the tide now is to strike first. Sophia lays out her plan, proposing the use of their partially trained malice eaters to overwhelm the hunters and funnel. Her thoughts are interrupted when she accidentally bumps into Sven. He reassures her about the failed anti-slime potion earlier, explaining that since the creature was an artificial slime, the failure wasn't her fault. Changing the subject, Sven notes that the Akashic prisoners have been oddly fixated on Talia. When asked why, she brushes it off. Monsters, she believes the tower is hidden within the nearby cliffs. To confirm, she questions the prisoners, who frantically deny her suspicion. Their panic only strengthens her conviction. Sitri, confident in her findings, proposes launching a preemptive strike to prevent the Akashic Tower from escaping. The prisoners, hearing this, begin to panic themselves, shouting that Sophia must act quickly to stop the hunters. Then they ask who she is. Sitri's expression hardens as she explains Sophia is her longtime archenemy, a brilliant alchemist. Though Sitri hates to admit it, she recognizes Sophia's genius and her dangerous partnership with Megas. The prisoners, begrudgingly acknowledging Sophia's brilliance, mock Sitri, calling her a level 2 failure. Sitri doesn't shy away from the insult. Crimes. Liz has finally convinced Krai to join the mission, pushing him to hurry so they can help Sitri before it's too late. But Krai, ever pragmatic, is more concerned with his own survival. He's run out of safety rings and hasn't had time to charge most of his relics, meaning even one hit could be fatal. Gain's face falls, disappointment evident, as he had hoped to meet the legendary hunter, a man whose reputation had always preceded him, a hunter who could even reach level 10. Sitri, however, offers a knowing smile. She speaks of Krai as the best hunter in the world, someone who could stand as a force to be reckoned with, but one who follows his own path. She never expected someone from Akashic Tower to be reckless enough to use an area of effect spell with hostages nearby, but she was prepared. As a seasoned hunter in the Grieving Souls, Sitri them all. Megas is furious, likening Flick's incompetence to that of his parents. Despite the pleas from other Akashic Tower members to retreat and continue their valuable research, Megas refuses the confrontation. The stakes couldn't be higher, and Sitri's resolve hardens. This isn't just about defeating the Akashic Tower, it's about stopping their twisted experiments and exposing the truth behind their horrific creations. As they prepare, Sitri's rivalry with Sophia looms large, but she pushes forward, knowing there is no turning back now. The hunters charge towards the cave, but the members of the Akashic Tower were ready to fight back, flying on their magical lions. But something wasn't right. It was all part of a plan to buy time. Inside his lab, Megas worked quickly to power up the Akashic Tower's greatest weapon. With a single press of a button, a stone statue crumbled away, revealing a giant, powerful golem. Megas grinned, proud of his creation, sure it would crush their enemies. The golem marched out of the cave, and there stood Gark, ready for battle. The golem swung its giant sword, and Gark had to use all his strength to block the attack. As Gark held the line, the Akashic Tower's flying lions attacked, dodging Sin and his team as chaos spread across the battlefield. In the middle of all this, two prisoners were quietly trying to break free from their ropes. One lion dove at Sven and hurt him, but he quickly healed and shouted for his team to keep fighting. Just when it seemed like the treasure hunters were about to lose, Liz appeared. With lightning speed, she took down one of the flying lions, rallying the team to keep pushing forward. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Krai and Tino were alone. Krai was worried about Liz, feeling a little exposed without her. Tino suddenly sensed something nearby and asked if she should take it out, but Krai thought it was just some wild animals. However, the figures Tino spotted were actually the escaped prisoners, confused by Krai's calm attitude. Krai didn't know the truth and kept going, but his special glasses suddenly stopped working, leaving Tino to lead the way. Back on the battlefield, Liz was in control, taunting the other treasure hunters for struggling. She mocked Sitri, calling her weak, which made Sitri angry. Liz casually explained that she had begged Krai to let her join before jumping back into the fight. Moving at incredible speed, she attacked the golem, cracking it with every hit. Gark, wanting to show he was still strong, rushed in with his ice axe, freezing the golem. Sven fired arrows and Gark swung his axe, but the golem dodged every attack, leaping into the air like one of the Six Reavers, Ansem. Liz thought it might have been modeled after Ansem, but pushed the thought away, focusing on taking it down. The golem then shocked her by revealing a cannon in its hand, shooting powerful blasts. Liz dodged but got grazed, forcing her to pull back. Sitri, watching from the side, realized they couldn't just overpower it, they needed to drain its power. But Liz didn't listen, rushing in to strike the golem with a powerful combo. Gark took the chance to attack its foot, seemingly finishing it off, but the golem activated thrusters and flew into the air. Liz realized they couldn't just hit it harder, they needed a new plan. Just then, Krai arrived, casually asking how everyone was doing. His calmness made the team feel better, knowing that with Krai, victory was almost certain. But when the golem attacked Krai, Tino held on to him, scared. Krai didn't even notice. The golem slammed into a wall and powered down, leaving everyone stunned. They all asked what Krai had done, but he had no clue his special glasses had run out of power. After the battle, the treasure hunters raided the Akashic Tower's base, grabbing everything they could find. Later, Sitri reported to Krai, thanking him for sending Liz at just the right moment. But the fight wasn't over yet. Sitri promised to personally take down the Akashic Tower. Meanwhile, the prisoners who had escaped joined forces with Magus and the rest of the defeated faction. They told Magus they were sure the red-haired alchemist, Sophia, was one of the treasure hunters and had probably snuck into their base with a hidden agenda. But Magus, who had seen Krai's power firsthand, wasn't interested in starting another fight. He decided it was time to leave the Empire and ordered his men to bring Sophia back to their side. Elsewhere, Krai attended a meeting with Gark and a government official. The official wanted to know about the Akashic Tower, but Krai simply admitted he didn't have the answers and suggested they ask Sitri since she was in charge. When the official heard Sitri's name, he seemed uneasy. The meeting revealed that 3 years ago, Sitri had been involved in a major jailbreak, which led to her demotion to rank 2 and the loss of her title. Gark had stepped in to clear her name, but since then, government officials had kept their distance from her. Back at the Akashic Tower's makeshift base, Magus' disciples brought in a frightened girl they thought was Sophia. She asked, trembling, what they were going to do to her. Magus dismissed her, ordering her to stop pretending, but when a flying lion suddenly grew hostile toward her, Magus hesitated. Maybe she was telling the truth. Just then, the real Sophia walked in, holding a bottle of wine. Everyone was shocked. But Sophia didn't seem surprised by the girl who looked just like her. Instead, she casually pointed out the subtle differences between them. Without warning, Sophia took off her wig and robe, revealing herself to be Sitri. Chaos broke out in the room. Magus, furious, demanded to know why she was pretending to be Sophia. Calmly, Sitri explained that she was, in fact, Sophia. The others accused her of betrayal, but Sitri explained that she had joined the Akashic Tower because she admired Magus' groundbreaking research. She respected his drive for knowledge and wanted to support him to see the results of his work. But now, Sitri declared it was time to end it all. She revealed that Krai's decision to let Magus' men go wasn't an act of mercy, it was a warning for her to stop and come back to him. Sitri reassured Magus that she hadn't betrayed any of his secrets, but admitted that Krai's ability to sense lies likely meant he already knew the truth. She also revealed that Krai had secretly orchestrated their tests with high-level hunters, giving them the chance to experiment. While most of the tests had worked, Sitri had stepped in during the golem battle to prevent things from getting too out of hand. Sadly, she informed Magus that their research had been seized and their arrests were coming soon. Despite everything, Sitri vowed to keep going with her work. She boldly declared that Sophia had never truly existed, so no one would ever find her. All the blame, she said, would fall squarely on Magus. As she turned to leave, she casually told her assistant that the red hair made her stand out, so she had borrowed the look. The assistant collapsed, overwhelmed by the truth. Furious, Magus' disciples charged at Sitri, but she summoned her flying lion, which appeared so powerful that it made them hesitate. However, Magus wasn't done. He unleashed a fierce fire attack, instantly killing the lion. But Sitri remained unharmed. She revealed that she had planned for this and showed off her Sitri slime, a creature that absorbed the attack to protect her. To everyone's horror, the slime began eating the lion's body. Sitri proudly explained that it was her best creation, able to grow by consuming mana. Magus froze, terrified, realizing the slime could eventually devour the entire world. Sitri smirked and said she just wanted to test it against a powerful mage like him. Magus' disciples quickly deployed a smoke bomb, hoping to give him time to escape while they held off the slime. But as Magus tried to flee, he crashed into someone big at the door and fell down the stairs. When he looked up, he recoiled in fear as Sitri calmly explained that she was chasing after power, hoping to be as strong as her friends. She admitted she had given up on making golems because they took too much time and effort. Instead, she started creating pet chimeras by raiding a high-security prison using escaped criminals as raw materials. Magus realized, horrified, that he was up against someone far more ruthless than he had ever imagined. With her mask on, Sitri declared that Magus would make an excellent test subject for her experiments. She ordered one of her chimeras to kill him, and it did so instantly, then reported back to Krai, saying everything had gone smoothly. Sitri promised to be more careful with her materials next time, while Krai remained completely unaware of her true plans. The scene shifts to the Hunter Association, where a meeting is happening about the Akashic Tower incident. Krai confidently asks the officials to hand over 2 items, the Akasha Golem and the Malice Eater, from the confiscated items. The officials look confused and ask why he wants the Malice Eater, joking that it sounds like the name of a terrible drink. Krai, with his usual humor, replies that he wants to try drinking it. The officials are left baffled by his response. Later, it's revealed that while Krai successfully got the Malice Eater, the Akasha Golem was still out of his reach. Apologizing to Sitri for this, she assures him it's okay and goes off to retrieve the Malice Eater while Krai waits in the lobby. While waiting, Krai runs into Gark, who asks if he's heard of a group called Falling Fallen. Gark explains that they've recently arrived in the capital from a place called Fog Nebula News, and their leader, Arnold Hale, is a level 7 hunter. Krai is surprised when Gark says that, admitting he's never heard of them. Krai says he's just not interested, but Gark then reveals that Arnold is a dragon slayer who defeated the legendary Thunder Dragon. Unfazed, Krai reminds Gark that he's a dragon slayer too. Gark laughs and agrees, but warns Krai not to cause any trouble, playfully patting him on the back. However, this friendly gesture ends up costing Krai one of his safety rings. As Gark walks away, Krai notices a poster for the Zudakshin, an exciting annual event where rare relics are sold. Krai really wants to attend, but quickly remembers he's completely out of money. He thinks about borrowing from Sitri, but decides against it because of all his unpaid debts. Just then, Chloa, Gark's cute niece, approaches Krai. Unlike her uncle, she's adorable, and Krai jokes about how genetics and anime logic seem to work only when it's convenient. Chloe asks if something's wrong, noticing that her uncle seemed extra cheerful. Krai guesses it's because of the dragon slayer Gark mentioned earlier. Chloe realizes he's talking about Arnold Hale from Falling Fog. Before they can talk more, Sitru shows up and cuts their conversation short. True to his usual style, Krai isn't interested in the Falling Fog group and leaves with Sitri without giving it a second thought. On their way out, Krai asks Sitri if she has the Malice Eater. She confirms that it's in her bag. They pass by a strange group, unaware that it's the Falling Fog party. Later, the Falling Fog members enter the Hunter Association, but are treated like country bumpkins when the receptionist doesn't recognize them. Back at Footprints, Krai looks at the Malice Eater and finds it oddly cute. Eva wonders if the creature might bite, but Sitri reassures her that it's safe because she's trained it not to harm her or Krai. The Malice Eater cuddles with Krai, but as it moves around in his arms, it starts taking off his safety rings one by one. Krai begins to worry, wondering if it's really harmless, thinking it might play him to death. He quickly hands it back to Sitri. Sitri reveals that she has named the creature Nemono, which makes Krai wonder if she's being serious. Sitri reminds him that he's the one who named it, but Krai insists it must have been an accident. Thinking ahead, Krai decides he needs to recharge his relics before the creature causes any more trouble. He asks Sitri when Lucia will be back. Sitri explains that it will take some time. Before they part ways, Sitri gives Krai a relic that can store a spell. Krai mentions he already has one, a gift from Lucia, and wonders why Sitri is giving him another. Sitri doesn't explain but tells him to wear it on his ring finger for it to work properly. Meanwhile, the members of Falling Fog are staying at a hotel, still upset about being looked down on by everyone in the city. One of their members says that, as outsiders, they'll need to prove their strength. The group agrees, and their leader, Arnold Hale, is especially eager to show off his power and earn the respect they believe they deserve. Later, Sitri is seen giving Krai a relaxing massage. During their conversation, Krai mentions he needs to recharge several of his relics, admitting that only Lucia can handle all of them. Sitri reassures him she'll take care of it and gathers the clan's mages. She announces a special magic training program, claiming it's based on Krai's design. To get the mages excited, she tells them that the training is very different from Krai's usual dangerous methods, and that anyone who participates could reach a skill level as high as Lucia's. The mages are shocked by this. At first, no one volunteers, but eventually, a group called Starlight steps forward. It's made up of 2 noble spirits, Lapis and Chris, who are very confident. However, Chris insults Krai, calling him weak. Lapis quickly tells her off, saying that while Krai might seem incompetent, he's still their clan master. Chris quiets down, but remains doubtful, struggling to understand how someone like Krai could be Lucia's older brother. Krai watches this, noting that noble spirits, basically elves with a new name, often look down on less skilled mages. It's revealed that Chris is a level 3 mage and Lapis is a level 4. Lapis asks Sitri if she really believes anyone could reach Lucia's level with this training. Sitri confidently explains that this is the very training that helped Lucia become so strong. Encouraged by this, Marietta, a member of the Obsidian Cross, volunteers. Sitri gives her a relic to recharge, but Marietta struggles. Sitri urges her to keep trying, and after a while, Marietta succeeds. But Sitri hands her another relic right away, and the cycle continues. Eventually, Marietta runs out of mana and collapses, exhausted. Citri explains the purpose of the training exercise. Normally, a person's mana capacity peaks in their teens, after which further growth becomes nearly impossible. However, by overusing their mana to the point of exhaustion, a small recovery window opens, allowing a person to slightly increase their upper mana limit. This method enables those past their natural growth period to expand their mana reserves. Sven comments that this technique pushes one to the absolute limit, and Chris adds that even noble spirits require significant recovery time after draining their mana, making the process inefficient. In response, Citri presents one of her peculiar potions, which instantly restores Marietta's mana and even boosts her mana cap. She explains that by repeating this cycle, one can steadily increase their mana capacity while refining their magical skills. Krai wonders aloud if this was the method Lucia used to attain her incredible strength. Lapis, still skeptical, questions whether this grueling method could really be the same one Lucia used. Citri confirms it but taunts them, recalling their earlier failed attempts to recruit Lucia and accusing them of overestimating themselves while avoiding proper training. The insult hits its mark, and both noble spirits demand all the relics to prove their abilities. As Starlight eagerly joins the exercise, other mages, encouraged by their participation, begin to join in as well. Citri assures Krai that this should resolve his mana-related issues. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Ark speaks with a nobleman about a proposal. Ark declines, stating that he still has much to learn. Realizing that Ark is referring to Krai, the nobleman decides to bide his time and looks forward to an exclusive contract. He then asks if Ark has met the Earl, mentioning that the Earl's daughter has been searching for him. Just then, Claire arrives, interrupting the conversation. Back at Footprints, Krai visits Liz and Tino. Tino asks him to wait while Liz is taking a bath. During this time, Citri, ever eccentric, tries to recruit Tino as her disciple. She promises to make him stronger with ease, but her approach makes Tino visibly uncomfortable. Noticing this, Krai steps in and firmly tells Citri to back off. From the bathroom, Liz calls out to Tino for her towel. Impatient, Liz walks straight out of the bath without waiting, leaving everyone stunned. Citri quickly covers Krai's eyes, scolding Liz for her lack of modesty. Liz, completely oblivious to the concept, strolls around without a care, casually asking Krai what he wanted. He tells her he simply wanted to celebrate her and Citri's return from their quest. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Liz attempts to hug him, but Citri intervenes, stopping her. As the sisters bicker, Krai seizes the opportunity to invite Tino to join their celebration, and Tino happily agrees. Meanwhile, the Falling Fog party is shown wandering the city, searching for a bar to make their mark. At the same time, Krai, Citri, Tino, and Liz are already enjoying themselves at a cozy pub. Liz, ever competitive, challenges Citri to a drinking contest. Despite her usual resilience, Liz quickly becomes intoxicated, while Citri remains unnervingly sober. Suspicious, Liz complains that something feels off, as she doesn't usually get drunk so easily. It becomes apparent that Citri has been spiking Liz's drinks. Tino notices the sly act, but wisely stays out of the sisters' feud. As the next round arrives, Citri quietly spikes Liz's drink again, urging her to continue. This time, Krai steps in, swapping the spiked drink with Citri's own. Liz downs her beer without hesitation, while Citri hesitates when she realizes the switch. With no way out, she reluctantly drinks her own concoction. Soon enough, both sisters are thoroughly drunk and begin venting their frustrations to Krai. Citri accuses Krai of seeing her only as a walking wallet, reminding him of his overwhelming debt. Krai reassures her that he'll pay her back someday, but Citri, still not satisfied, mischievously suggests that he could repay her with his body. Before she can act on it, Liz steps in and drags Citri away, and the sisters' drunken bickering intensifies. At that moment, the Falling Fog party bursts into the bar, like a rowdy biker gang. They shove aside patrons and loudly introduce themselves, boasting about their leader, Arnold, being a level 7 hunter. The crowd is impressed, but the group demands booze and women to celebrate their arrival. Liz, unimpressed by the spectacle, walks up with a drink in hand. Arnold, mistaking her intentions, insults her, claiming he has no interest in children. Liz, unfazed, smirks and coolly replies that she wasn't planning on serving him anyway. Without warning, she pours the drink over his head and smashes the mug onto it. Chaos erupts as Liz easily takes down Arnold and his lackeys, mocking how weak they are. The bar descends into a brief uproar, but Liz's display of dominance quickly settles the commotion. With their rivals subdued, the patrons return to their revelry. Krai, ever polite, apologizes to Arnold and his party for the trouble before leaving with Liz and Tino. Citri, still stumbling drunk, follows behind, muttering about how her spike drink plan had backfired. Elsewhere in the city, Chloe finds herself lost in thought, reflecting on a decision that had changed the course of her life 3 years ago. She remembers failing the first step's entrance exam with none other than Luke as the examiner. His reputation for holding impossibly high standards meant that she stood no chance of passing. Heartbroken, Chloe convinced herself that she wasn't cut out to be a hunter, and instead chose to settle for a more grounded life as a receptionist at the Hunter Association. A soft sigh escapes her lips as she wonders what might have been if things had turned out differently. Back at the clan house, EVA confronts Krai about the recent bar brawl involving Liz. Oblivious as ever, Krai hadn't even realized that Liz had taken down the entire Falling Fog party led by the legendary Dragon Slayer Arnold Hale until EVA filled him in. Eva's tone is serious as she warns Krai of Arnold's fearsome reputation, urging him to handle the situation delicately. Krai, ever the laid-back leader, simply waves her concern off, confident that Liz's punch delivered a well-deserved lesson. His thoughts quickly drift, though, as he daydreams aloud about how delicious grilled thunder dragon would taste. Eva stares at him in disbelief, asking where this strange thought came from. Krai, casually shrugging, reveals that Sitri once cooked it for him, and now he's got an undeniable craving for it. Eva, trying to steer him back to reality, reminds Krai that thunder dragon meat is a rare and priceless delicacy, far too valuable to consider casually. Krai, however, remains unfazed, wistfully noting that it would still be nice to have some. Meanwhile, in the heart of Falling Fog's hideout, the group is still reeling from their humiliating defeat. Arnold's pride is wounded, and he vows to track down the woman who brought them down, determined to restore his party's honor. The group heads to the Hunter Association, demanding her name. Just as tensions rise, Gark enters the scene, his signature smug grin in place. With a flourish, he reveals Liz's name and introduces himself as the branch manager. He adds a jab, claiming he'd warned Liz's guardian to keep her in check, causing Arnold's group to growl in frustration. Gark goes further, dropping the bombshell of Liz's so-called guardian Krai Andrey, level 8 hunter. The revelation hits like a thunderclap, leaving Falling Fog stunned. With dramatic flair, Gark reads aloud a message from Krai himself. Arnold, since you're such a big shot dragon slayer, could you bring me some thunder dragon meat? I'd love to grill it. Arnold's fury reaches a boiling point. Enraged, he orders his party to gear up for war, vowing to take down 1,000 tricks and restore their reputation. Back at the clan house, EVA addresses another looming issue: Krai's staggering debt to Sitri. She bluntly asks if he even knows the extent of what he owes her. Krai, clueless as ever, attempts to count on his fingers but fails to come up with an answer. Eva, exasperated, demands to know what Sitri has said about repayment. Krai recalls with a hint of frustration the 3 options Sitri presented: throw him into prison, marry her to consolidate their assets, or marry her. The latter 2, he notes with a sigh, are essentially the same. In a half-joking tone, he tells Eva that he might have no choice but to marry Sitri. Her scolding, of course, only makes him laugh, and he reassures her that he's just kidding. Still, he promises to pay back his debt, though not without Eva rolling her eyes. She quickly drafts a strict repayment plan, warning him to stop spending recklessly. As Eva leaves, Krai gazes out at the evening sky. His thoughts drift to the upcoming Zudan auction, a tantalizing event that he can't miss. With so much on his plate, he mutters aloud, "What should I do next?" Meanwhile, across town, Falling Fog is busy gathering intel on Krai. What they uncover, however, is a tangled web of rumors, tales of impossible feats and legendary accomplishments that sound more like myths than facts. Frustrated but still intrigued, they report back to Arnold, who grows more convinced that Krai is an enigma shrouded in legend. The rumors only fuel Arnold's suspicions, and he concludes that Krai must be avoiding combat because no one in the capital has proven worthy of his strength, but his party challenges this theory, revealing that no one has ever actually seen Krai fight. This leads Arnold to a new conclusion: Krai is likely a clever strategist, not a warrior, who has climbed to level 8 by relying on the talents of his comrades. Arnold's skepticism soon turns to disdain. He admits that Krai might have some skill, but he dismisses him as nothing compared to his own raw power. Fired up, Arnold declares his intent to exact revenge, determined to prove that Falling Fog is no mere gang of country bumpkins. Back at the clan house, Tino quietly climbs up to the balcony where Krai sits, deep in thought. Noticing the subtle smile on his face, she approaches him and asks if he needs anything. Krai chuckles softly, realizing she must have been watching him from below. They move inside together, and Krai begins to bring up his enormous debt. Misunderstanding his intent, Tino panics, assuming Krai is asking her for money. She quickly responds, stressing that her funds are tied up in repairing her gear for her next raid. Krai reassures her with a calm laugh, explaining that he isn't asking for a loan. In a casual tone, he mentions that his debt is in the 10-digit range, leaving Tino stunned. For someone like her master to be in such an absurd amount of debt seems incomprehensible. Her admiration for Krai only deepens, but the thought of her seemingly invincible master being so financially entangled, especially with Sitri, shakes her. Krai brushes off the situation nonchalantly, even joking that he could marry Sitri to erase the debt. The idea of Krai being owned by Sitri unsettles Tino to her core, but Krai quickly shifts the topic. Trying to lighten the mood, he suggests they go grab some sweets, and the two of them set off through the lively streets of the town. It feels like an impromptu date, one that breaks through Tino's usual seriousness. As they pass a bustling market, Tino proposes a daring plan, exploring a treasure vault together to find relics they could sell at the upcoming auction. Krai groans in exasperation, immediately suspecting she's trying to get him killed. Tino, unfazed by his reluctance, confidently assures him that she could easily conquer a treasure vault, unshaken by any danger. Krai sighs, thinking that if she really had those kinds of skills, he wouldn't be in the mountain of debt he's in. Gently, he deflects her idea, promising they'll revisit it another time. Meanwhile, falling fog roams the streets, aimlessly grumbling about how to find thousand tricks. They've ruled out ambushing Krai at his clan house, and frustration is mounting. Fate, however, has a twisted sense of humor. Krai and Tino stroll right into their path. Arnold, his pride still wounded from the bar confrontation, stops them. Krai, as oblivious as ever, doesn't recognize the group. Arnold, now growing irritated, reminds him of their encounter the previous night. Slowly, recognition flickers in Krai's eyes. He remembers them now, but before he can say anything, Tino steps forward boldly. With a gleam in her eye, Tino taunts the group, declaring that her master is practically a god and warning them not to pick a fight they can't win. Krai, ever the diplomat, tries to de-escalate the situation, politely explaining that he's on a date and doesn't want any trouble. He even offers to kneel and apologize if it would smooth things over. But Tino, fueled by her growing pride and Krai's odd ability to stay so calm, quickly cuts in, turning up the bravado. She claims Krai is only worried that they'll lose their confidence after he humiliates them in battle. Arnold's patience snaps and he demands a fight, determined to restore his shattered ego. Left with no choice, Krai agrees, but in his usual calm manner, suggests they move to a more public area. As they make their way through the streets, a curious crowd begins to gather, buzzing with excitement. Krai, still unperturbed, looks disappointed. Secretly, he had hoped someone from First Steps would be present to bolster their chances, but it seems fate had other plans. Tension thickens in the air as Arnold's temper flares. The crowd, sensing the impending showdown, grows restless. The stage is set for a battle that no one in the capital will soon forget. Arnold's frustration boils over as Krai continues his strange and evasive behavior, seemingly uninterested in the confrontation. Finally, he snaps, demanding to know how long Krai plans to stall. Before Krai can even respond, Arnold interrupts, a sneer crossing his face. He accuses Krai of being a fraud who has only advanced to level 8 because of his friends. His words drip with disdain, and he dismisses Krai's abilities as a mere product of luck and reliance on others. The challenge hangs in the air, and Krai, still cool and composed, doesn't flinch. The tension between the two continues to build, setting the stage for the confrontation that will test their egos and their resolve. The tension continues to build as Tino, unable to tolerate Arnold's taunts, steps forward to defend her master's honor. With fierce determination, she boldly asks Krai for permission to fight in his place, hoping to restore his reputation. Much to her surprise, and even her own shock, Krai agrees almost immediately. He's eager to avoid the confrontation, and any excuse will do. Tino freezes, realizing her words were meant in jest. But now it's too late. With no choice but to follow through, she reluctantly gears up and charges at Arnold. Her resolve is clear, but it becomes painfully obvious that she is no match for him. Arnold blocks her attacks with ease, his strength and skill far outclassing hers. Krai, growing increasingly desperate, scans the crowd over and over, hoping for a miracle someone from First Steps to intervene. One of Arnold's companions, irritated by Krai's distracted demeanor, snaps at him to focus on the fight unfolding before him, as Tino fights for his sake. Embarrassed, Krai tries to cheer for her with an over-the-top enthusiasm that only makes her feel worse. Tino, despite her valiant efforts, struggles to land any meaningful blows. Finally, with a swift and brutal counter, Arnold slams her into the ground, pinning her beneath him. Towering over her, he demands that Krai stop hiding behind his allies and face him himself. With no other option, and realizing the situation is slipping further out of control, Krai decides to use the relic that Lucia had prepared for him. He recalls the time he'd requested a spell to subdue high-level hunters without causing harm, a nearly impossible task. Yet, Lucia had crafted a relic imbued with gravity magic, a spell designed specifically for such a scenario. In an instant, Arnold and his party are pinned to the ground by an invisible, crushing force. Confused and enraged, Arnold struggles against the weight, but the pressure only intensifies. Krai calmly explains the nature of the spell, dismissing any accusations of being a mage. Instead, he outlines the conditions for anyone who wants to challenge him in the future. Anyone seeking to fight him must first defeat First Step's 3 main parties: Obsidian Cross, Starlight, and Arc Brave. Only after conquering these teams would Arnold, or anyone else, earn the right to face him. Overwhelmed by the spell's weight, Arnold passes out, and the crowd watches in stunned silence. Later, Krai and Tino sit down to relax at a local cafe. Tino, still visibly upset, feels like she has let her master down. Krai reassures her, admitting that he misjudged the situation. He isn't the best at gauging a hunter's true strength once they reach a certain level. Tino, determined to redeem herself, pleads with Krai to let her prove her worth. She proposes a daring plan to venture into a treasure vault alone and find priceless relics that could help pay off his debt. Meanwhile, at the clan's training grounds, Liz is seen easily defeating a replica of the Akashic Golem, though she grumbles about wanting to face the real thing. Citri, ever pragmatic, reminds her that the real golem is locked away by the investigative bureau, and that even Krai couldn't bypass their strict rules. Liz, frustrated but resigned, decides to end her training for the day. Before she leaves, Citri mentions Krai's encounter with falling fog. Liz, curious about how it ended, listens intently as Citri explains that Krai had used gravity magic to handle the situation. Liz briefly considers crushing Arnold's group for their previous arrogance. Later, Krai meets with Chloe for tea. She inquires about his run-in with falling fog, prompting Krai to casually mention that Arnold and his party seemed upset. Chloe, quick to theorize, suggests that their frustration might be tied to the Thunder Dragon message. Krai corrects her, clarifying that he was referring to grilled chicken, not dragon meat. Confused, Chloe wonders what she should say to clear up the misunderstanding. Krai's simple response, "I'll never forget you," has Chloe skeptical, as it sounds more like something Krai would say before forgetting them entirely. The conversation shifts and Chloe presses Krai about the reason she failed her exam 3 years ago. Caught off guard, Krai dodges the question, telling her to figure it out on her own. To soften the blow, he reassures her that she would easily pass if she retook the test now. He also encourages her to focus on her current role as a receptionist, pointing out how much the hunters rely on her. As Krai leaves, he suddenly remembers the real reason Chloe failed the test. She was just shy of the age requirement, unable to meet the minimum age of 15. Oblivious to this, Chloe misinterprets Krai's evasive response as part of one of his legendary 1,000 trials, convincing herself that Krai is challenging her to discover the truth for herself. Unbeknownst to her, she's fallen victim to yet another one of Krai's well-meaning, yet entirely misunderstood, attempts to offer advice. The following day, Arnold and his crew are drowning their frustrations in drinks, trying to wash away the sting of their defeat at Krai's hands. Their anger isn't just about being mocked, but the fact that Krai had taken them down so effortlessly, without even leaving them with a scratch. Adding insult to injury, he had the nerve to suggest they face the strongest parties in his clan before they even think about challenging him again. As the group stews in their humiliation, a man with a cannon-like hairstyle walks in, clearly having just returned from a reconnaissance mission. His expression is anything but triumphant as he reports his findings. He had visited the 3 top parties Krai had mentioned, only to be met with shock and pity. The leader of one party had laughed it off, assuming Krai was simply messing with them. The elf girl from another party had bluntly told him they weren't interested in getting involved in Krai's affairs. Finally, he reached out to Ark's party, but before he could even meet Ark, he was advised to completely ignore anything coming from Krai. The words hit Arnold like a slap to the face. His anger flares as he vows revenge. One of his companions suggests patience, advising them to wait for the grand auction where they could secure better gear. They might even find someone willing to buy the strange relic no one else in the kingdom seemed interested in. But Arnold is beyond reasoning, his mind is set. Krai will pay for this humiliation. Meanwhile, Krai and Tino are at a relic shop, eager to have a newly acquired item analyzed by an expert. Tino casually mentions that she found the relic in a level 1 treasure vault. Following Krai's advice, the old appraiser, initially indifferent, becomes wide-eyed as he realizes the relic's significant value. Krai, full of excitement, eagerly asks about its abilities, but the appraiser explains that detailed tests will be required, and the process will take time due to the backlog of relics needing analysis before the upcoming auction. Krai's excitement only grows. He asks the old man to show him the lineup of relics slated for the auction, and suggests that he chat with Tino in the meantime. The appraiser, reluctant but charmed by Tino's resemblance to his granddaughter, agrees to the arrangement. As they chat, the appraiser advises Tino to lean on her friends if things get tough. He also remarks that despite Krai's many bad habits, he is a dependable man. This sentiment causes Tino to spiral into a mix of emotions. She gushes about how incredible Krai is, even though he's drowning in debt and prone to reckless decisions. She humbly admits that she's nowhere near his level, which raises a concern in the old man. Worried about the influence Krai may be having on Tino, the appraiser heads over to confront him. He finds Krai completely engrossed in a peculiar mask, one made from the flattened face of a colossal titan. Krai's eyes gleam with excitement as he examines it, convinced that the mask can help him alter his appearance at will. He reminisces about a similar mask he once owned, only for Liz to break it, saying it was too creepy. Now, he's determined to own it again. The old man arrives just as Krai is inspecting the mask. He tells him to leave so he can get back to his work. But Krai, unfazed, insists that he's genuinely interested in the mask and wants to negotiate directly with whoever sent it for appraisal. The old man, still grumbling, agrees to arrange a meeting after the appraisal is completed. Later, Krai and Tino step out to grab some dessert and take a break. As they sit and enjoy their treats, Tino innocently asks Krai how he plans to afford the bizarre mask. She points out that Citri is already spending a fortune on research and providing free mana potions to mages. Krai, visibly stressed by the financial pressures, starts brainstorming solutions. He knows asking Liz for money would likely lead to her resorting to robbery, which would only cause more trouble for them all. As they make their way back to the clan building, Krai notices a noble's carriage parked outside. A blonde girl steps out, smiling as she thanks Ark for giving her a tour of the building. She comments that most hunters are nothing but fools, but Ark is a true gentleman, and she's glad to have seen where he works. Krai's mind begins to wander as he wonders just who this mysterious noble might be, and what implications her presence might have for his plans. Krai and Tino find themselves standing across from Claire, the blonde noblewoman who had visited the clan building the previous day. Claire notices their stares and snaps, asking what they're staring at. Ark quickly steps in, introducing her as Claire, the daughter of an earl. He adds, almost apologetically, that Krai is the master of first steps. Claire eyes Krai skeptically and scoffs. She mentions that she's heard a lot about him, but thinks he looks far too weak to be a level 8 hunter. Someone like him doesn't deserve to rank above Ark. Krai remains unfazed, listening calmly as she continues to insult him. The following day, Krai is in a lighter mood as he casually strikes up a conversation with Ark, trying to sound as casual as possible, but failing to hold back the question he's been eager to ask, do you have a lot of money? Ark, already knowing where this is going, flatly refuses to lend him any. Slightly disappointed, Krai turns to Sitri with the same request, only to face another rejection. Watching Krai's growing desperation, can't hold back his laughter. As word spreads through the clan, the gossip snowballs. The rumors fly throughout the city like wildfire. In the end, Krai is forced to turn to Sitri. She assures him that she will provide as much money as he needs, even if it means putting aside her own priorities. Krai feels both guilty and uneasy, knowing the financial strain it's putting on her. Later, they find themselves at a cafe, nervously awaiting the arrival of the relic's owner. Krai hopes for a smooth negotiation, but he is caught completely off guard when the relic's owner turns out to be none other than Arnold. The two stare at each other, both surprised to see the other. They sit down to negotiate, with Sitri and Arnold's lackey subtly playing mind games and tensions running high. Arnold, ever the strategist, speaks up, clearly aware of Krai's desperation. He points out that they don't even know the true effects of the mask, but that Krai's desperation suggests he knows something he doesn't. Arnold refuses to make any deal unless Krai reveals the mask's true power. Krai remains calm and collected, explaining that he can't share the details. However, he warns Arnold that the mask is dangerous and using it is banned in their country. He advises Arnold to let it go before he gets himself into trouble. This strikes a nerve with Arnold's ego. He declares that he won't sell the mask. But as the silence lingers, Arnold begins to second-guess himself, wondering if Krai is trying to use reverse psychology to manipulate him into keeping the dangerous relic. After a tense standoff, Arnold reluctantly relents, deciding it's better to sell it now and avoid future headaches. He sets the price at 10 million, much lower than Krai had expected. Krai, stunned, had anticipated at least 30 million. Sitri, unfazed by the low price, reassures Krai and pulls out 10 million in cash to finalize the deal. But just as they're about to complete the transaction, an unexpected turn of events unfolds. Other patrons in the cafe, drawn in by the rumors surrounding the relic, begin a bidding war. The stakes escalate quickly, with Claire, who had been watching from the sidelines, ultimately winning with a staggering bid of 100 million. Krai can't compete with that kind of money. The entire day ends in defeat for Krai. He sulks, feeling the sting of his loss. Yoehe, who had been observing quietly, explains that the bidding war reached such a fever pitch because of the rumors that Krai had borrowed money from Ark. Ironically, even Claire, with her newfound fortune, fails to secure the mask as more nobles join the fray. The government intervenes, deciding to send the relic to the official auction, which dashes any hopes Krai had of owning it. Yoehe, furious, scolds Krai for trying to spend so much money when he's already drowning in debt. Krai solemnly promises that he won't repeat his mistake. Just as the conversation winds down, Sitri enters the room, casually carrying a massive bag of gold. She announces that she's arranged for 800 million bucks so they can compete with the nobles. Yoehe's eyes widen in horror at the sight of such a sum. Sitri, however, coyly explains that she's been saving this money for their wedding, so it only makes sense to use it early. Yoehe, exasperated, starts lecturing Sitri, blaming her for Krai's irresponsible spending. Sitri, with a dismissive wave, insists that it's her money and she'll spend it however she pleases. Tired of the argument, Krai quietly moves to the window, seeking some air. Not long after Sitri joins him, she suggests they meet with Claire to understand why she's so desperate to secure the relic, and perhaps try negotiating with her directly. Krai, eager for any opportunity to get what he wants, agrees. The two head off to meet Claire, unaware of the dramatic turn their encounter will take. Claire is clearly not pleased about their unannounced visit. She glares at Krai, accusing him of being as bold as Ark for confronting her directly. Krai tries to explain that he isn't Ark's rival, just a friend, and admits he hasn't surpassed him. Claire misinterprets this, thinking he's mocking her crush on Ark, and her temper flares up. She declares that she will secure the strongest relic at any cost and give it to Ark so he can become the strongest. Krai, ever the pragmatist, calmly tells her that Ark wouldn't appreciate it. He adds that no one can become the strongest simply by using a relic. But Claire refuses to back down, vowing to get the relic for Ark no matter what. That's when Sitri steps in, revealing her budget of 200 million bucks, and challenges Claire to raise more than that. If she can't, she should step aside. Claire, disheartened and realizing she can't afford such a high amount, turns to her father for help. Her father, ever the proud noble, insists that losing to Krai would bring dishonor to their family. Determined to win at any cost, he agrees to withdraw from their savings and even take out a loan to fund Claire's bid. He instructs her to win the auction at all costs, no matter what it takes. Krai and his group made their way toward the auction venue, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Sitri, ever the strategist, noted that they had managed to gather 950 million, estimating their chances of winning at about 70%. She pointed out that they could have raised more if Krai hadn't stopped her from seeking additional funds. Krai, however, was adamant that the amount they had was sufficient. Liz, always the troublemaker, grinned mischievously, assuring him that if things went wrong, she'd simply steal the relic for him. Sitri immediately warned against this, pointing out that such a move would make Krai the prime suspect in a robbery. Krai, reflecting quietly on his longing for the relic, decided it wasn't worth the trouble and resolved to give up on it if they couldn't win it today. Inside the auction house, the crowd was already buzzing with excitement. Krai and his group met with Tino, Greg, Ruta, and Gilbert. Krai, seeing Tino, remarked that she should have joined them earlier, but Tino calmly reminded him that he never invited her. Krai realized his mistake, admitting that he had intentionally avoided inviting her to keep her out of the spotlight. As Krai observed the crowd, he quickly realized his initial assumption had been correct. Everyone was talking about him and the relic he was after. To avoid drawing more attention to himself, he quietly asked Tino to participate in the auction on his behalf, explaining that she would only need to place a bid when he signaled her to do so. Tino agreed to help, but Liz, disappointed, wished she could be the one to bid. Krai quickly cheered her up, reassuring her that everything would be fine. Liz, now excited, urged Tino to win at all costs, but Krai reassured Tino that if they lost, it wouldn't be her fault. He would be the one to decide when to raise or fold. The scene shifted as Claire entered the auction house. Sitri, ever observant, noticed Claire's confident demeanor, quickly realizing that she had successfully gathered the necessary funds for the relic. The group then turned their attention to the 14th item up for auction. Liz, already bored and impatient, asked Krai when the relic would be brought out. Krai explained that it was likely to be the final item due to the attention it was drawing. He also added that they couldn't afford to bid on anything else because of their limited funds, which frustrated him as he watched other items come and go. As Krai observed the various items, he found himself growing increasingly tempted despite their tight budget. He realized that while most of the items were only useful in specific circumstances, he still wanted them badly. Tino glanced at him with every new item introduced, as though testing his resolve to resist bidding. Krai struggled but managed to resist the temptation, warning the group to be cautious with their funds. As he continued to observe the items, an alternate source of funding flickered in his mind, but just as he was about to act on it, the next item, the Akashic Golem, was announced. Sitri visibly reacted, surprised to see the golem up for auction. Krai remembered that this was something she had been eyeing when they had acquired the Malice Eater. The bidding for the golem began, and Krai asked Sitri what she wanted to do. Sitri hesitated, admitting that while she would love to have the golem, purchasing it would mean forfeiting their chance at the relic. She explained that the golem had cost her a lot of time and resources to create, and it was a memento of her comrades. Reluctantly, she told Krai not to worry about it, but Krai could tell she truly wanted it. Ignoring her protests, he signaled Tino to start bidding. The price quickly rose, surpassing 300 million, and Sitri turned to Krai, asking if he was really okay with this. Krai reassured her, claiming that it was the best way to spend their money, though in the back of his mind, he knew it was Sitri's money he was talking about. As the bidding intensified, Krai reflected on Sitri's earlier words about the golem being a memento of her comrades. He wondered if the golem had been created by alchemist friends of hers who had been kidnapped by the Akashic Tower. The price continued to climb, soon reaching 900 million. Sitri grew anxious, realizing they wouldn't be able to afford it if the price exceeded 950 million. Her fears came true as the price surpassed 1 billion, and she resigned herself to losing it, but Krai didn't stop bidding. In the end, he secured the Akashic Golem for 1,060 million. Liz quickly reminded him that they had gone 110 million over budget, warning that this could cause serious problems if they didn't pay. Krai calmly reassured her, handing her a check for the extra 110 million. Sitri thanked him, promising to pay him back. However, Krai thought to himself that she didn't need to pay him back, as the money wasn't his, it was Lucci's. He wondered if it was really okay to use half of his sister's life savings without consulting her, but he quickly pushed the thought aside. To everyone's surprise, it's announced that Greg is the actual winner of the Akashic Golem auction. Later, Krai learns that Tino, unsure of how to participate, had asked Greg for help. Gilbert, ever the pragmatist, asks Krai what he plans to do about the other relic. Now that so much has been spent on the golem, Krai replies that his main goal has been achieved, and he decides to head home, telling the others to enjoy the rest of the auction. Meanwhile, the event continues, and the highly anticipated final item is unveiled. On his way home, Krai recalls Claire's mention of giving the strongest relic to Ark, sparking an idea. The next day, Krai calls Ark, declaring that he'll understand everything once he's there. Ark's party grumbles about another of Krai's vague requests, but Krai reassures them, confident that Claire knows the relic's dangers and that Ark can handle it. He urges Ark to leave immediately, or they'll be late. Ark asks if he should bring weapons, but Krai advises against it. Ark hesitates, asking what will happen if he's late, and Krai nonchalantly replies that he'll be in grief later. Krai reflects on his plan. Ark will retrieve the treasure, and Krai will buy it from him at a friendly discount. He wonders why he didn't think of this earlier and hopes there won't be any complications. Meanwhile, Claire is in her room, still haunted by her father's scornful words about her auction victory. He claims she only won because Krai let her, scolding her for spending 200 million on an ugly relic. He expressed disappointment at not seeing Krai's true abilities. Frustrated and feeling unnoticed, Claire examines the mask, wondering what's so special about it. To her shock, the mask begins to speak, offering power. It claims to have been watching her, sensing her sadness and regret. Claire grabs her sword defensively, but the mask tempts her, promising to grant her deepest desires. As it leaps toward her, Claire recalls Thousand Tricks' warning that the mask is dangerous. Before she can react, the mask takes control of her body. The scene shifts to Ark's arrival at Claire's house, where her father informs him that Claire has locked herself in her room. He hopes she'll open the door for Ark, expressing gratitude that he came. Ark wonders what Krai was trying to tell him when, suddenly, they hear a commotion. Ark and his party rush to investigate, finding a knight being thrown around. They discover that Claire is the cause of the chaos. Ark notices the mask has attached itself to her. In her altered state, Claire, her voice distorted, begs him not to look at her like this before hurling another knight at them. She declares that she has become stronger and vows to kill anyone who mocks her. Ark steps forward, urging her to calm down. She recognizes him, and he asks what happened. In a distorted voice, she explains that she acquired the mask for him, calling it the strongest relic. She insists she fought hard for it. Ark thanks her, assuring her that everything will be fine. He gently asks her to remove the mask, but she hesitates when she notices Ark holding a weapon. Ark recalls Krai's warning not to bring a weapon near Claire, but it's too late. Claire's anger flares upon seeing the weapon, realizing she has no other choice. Ark prepares to fight, but instructs his party to attack with extreme care to avoid harming Claire. The confrontation escalates. Meanwhile, at Arnold's hotel, his team is jubilant, amazed that they managed to sell the cursed mask for 200 million. However, as they enter their room, they find Liz and Citri waiting for them. They demand to know why the two are there. Liz explains that they've come to collect their share of the auction profits. She points out that the only reason the relic fetched such a high price was due to Krai's plan, and it's only fair they get a cut. Arnold and his party refuse to share their earnings, prompting Citri to reveal an antidote she's willing to sell for 110 million. They scoff at her, accusing her of trying to trick them, but Citri explains the situation, revealing that the booze they drank earlier was poisoned and the effects will soon kick in. Everyone except Arnold begins to feel the symptoms, and Liz notes that Arnold, being a level 7 hunter, might survive, but the others won't be so lucky. Arnold reluctantly agrees to their demands. Later, Ark and his party return to the clan house, where Krai has prepared a party to celebrate their return. Seeing their expressions, Krai guesses that Claire must have thrown a tantrum. However, Ark corrects him, saying she did far more than that, but as usual, Krai has no idea what he's talking about. Krai then asks where the relic is. Ark shows it to him, and Krai eagerly opens the package, despite Ark's warning not to be reckless. Krai is thrilled to finally have the reverse face in his possession. However, to his surprise, the relic begins to speak. It had been subdued earlier, but now it's active. The relic attempts to possess Krai, but quickly realizes he has no powers, ambition, or greed. Noting that all his skills are ranked -E, it releases him from its control, declaring him unworthy. Krai laughs at the revelation, recognizing that this isn't the reverse face after all. Still, he doesn't mind. A talking relic is rare enough. He asks Ark if he can keep it, and Ark, creeped out by the relic, is more than happy to let him have it. As the party begins, Krai steps out onto the balcony alone, gazing out over the city. He reflects on how this isn't the relic he was searching for, and wonders just how weak he truly is, considering even a 10-year-old managed to activate the mask. He thinks that maybe it's time for him to finally retire. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic content. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't miss out on the next video. There's always more fun, surprises, and challenges ahead. Until next time, stay awesome and keep exploring.